Two emperors, two nightmares in togas, but only one can be called the worst ruler in Roman history, Caligula or Nero. Let's compare these two infamous tyrants and decide who the worst was. Caligula, born Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, was the son of the celebrated General Germanicus and Agrippina the Elder, a granddaughter of Augustus himself. He was raised in military camps and imperial palaces, witnessing both glory and betrayal firsthand. After his father's mysterious death, his family fell out of favor under Emperor Tiberius. By the time he was brought to live on the island of Capri with the aging emperor, Caligula had learned one thing: in Rome, masks were survival. In 37 AD, after Tiberius's death, possibly aided by Caligula himself, he became emperor at just 24 years old. The people of Rome celebrated. He was the heir of a beloved general, the last light of the Julian bloodline, and he started strong, granting bonuses to the Praetorian Guard, ending treason trials, and releasing those imprisoned under Tiberius's paranoia. But just a few months into his reign, Caligula fell gravely ill, possibly poisoned, or suffering from epilepsy or encephalitis. When he recovered, he was no longer the golden boy of Rome. His behavior turned erratic, violent, and deeply disturbing. Some historians argue the illness damaged his brain. Others believe it simply unleashed his true nature. Nero, by contrast, came to power in 54 AD, just 16 years old, the youngest emperor in Roman history at the time. He was the great-great-grandson of Augustus and the stepson of Emperor Claudius, who had adopted him as heir at the urging of his ambitious mother, Agrippina the Younger. Agrippina was no passive player. She orchestrated Nero's rise from the shadows, marrying her uncle Claudius, eliminating rivals, and positioning herself as co-ruler. In his early reign, Nero was guided by two powerful mentors, the philosopher Seneca and the Praetorian prefect Burrus. Under their influence, Nero's early years were marked by moderation and idealism. He lowered taxes, improved the grain supply, banned secret trials, and even declared that capital punishment should be avoided whenever possible. He also promoted the arts and athletics, hosting grand public games and contests. Just like Caligula, Rome saw in him a new golden age, young, cultured, and seemingly just. Both began with hope, but both descended into horror. Caligula's descent wasn't just a fall from grace. It was a nosedive into unhinged tyranny. What began as eccentric behavior quickly spiraled into open contempt for Roman tradition, religion, and life itself. Ancient sources, Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Philo, claim Caligula began to view himself not just as a ruler, but as a living god. He dressed as Jupiter, Venus, and Apollo, and demanded temples, altars, and sacrifices in his name. He wasn't just playing God, he demanded worship from Rome's elites. Senators were ordered to grovel before him. One senator, accused of failing to show enthusiasm during a speech, was executed on the spot. Caligula turned the Senate into a circus. He mocked them in public, forced noblemen to run beside his chariot like slaves, and is famously said to have considered appointing his horse, Incitatus, as consul. Some historians think it was satire, a cruel joke meant to humiliate Rome's governing class. Others aren't so sure. Executions became his favorite form of entertainment. He'd watch them during meals. Entire families were wiped out for imagined offenses. And if he suspected you of disloyalty, death was a kindness. Torture, starvation, or exile were just as likely. He is reported to have killed Tiberius Gemellus, his cousin and potential rival, and numerous senators on suspicion of treachery or to seize their wealth. Nero's madness, by contrast, wore a different mask. If Caligula was driven by rage and delusion, Nero was seduced by vanity and art. He didn't just rule Rome. He wanted to perform for it. He saw himself as a god of culture, a singer, a poet, an actor. He forced senators and citizens alike to attend his endless performances, often locking the doors to prevent escape. Some faked heart attacks just to be carried out. But behind the lyre and laurel wreaths lay cruelty no less savage than Caligula's. He arranged the poisoning of his stepbrother, Britannicus, who was the son of Emperor Claudius, heir to the throne and therefore a threat. He was poisoned at a dinner party attended by his sister Octavia, Agrippina, and several other notables. Nero held his funeral the very next day in the rain and gave no eulogy, saying it was a tradition in the case of untimely deaths not to oppress the public with eulogies and processions. Britannicus was killed at just 13 years old. And when his mother Agrippina grew too powerful, he had her killed after several failed attempts involving a collapsing ceiling and a sabotaged boat. Nero killed her by direct order to his guards, who stabbed her in her own house. His wife Octavia was exiled and later executed. Supposedly so, he could marry his second wife, Poppaea Sabina. When he kicked Poppaea to death while she was pregnant, he later mourned her with golden statues, and then tried to replace her with a young boy dressed to look like her. And then came the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. For 6 days, the city burned. Ancient historians differ on whether Nero started it, but most agree. While Rome was in flames, Nero sang of the fall of Troy, cloaked in stage costume. In the aftermath, he deflected blame by accusing a small religious sect, Christians. His punishments were brutal: crucifixions, wild beast executions, and victims burned alive to light his gardens at night. Nero's madness wasn't as sudden or erratic as Caligula's, but it was cold, calculating, and wrapped in gold. Caligula's reign was brief, just 4 years, but the scars ran deep. He launched no military conquests, enacted no lasting reforms, and built no great monuments beyond vanity projects. Instead, he left behind a court gripped by fear, a senate humiliated, and a public bewildered by the spectacle of their divine emperor-turned-dictator. Despite nominal military campaigns, like a bizarre expedition to the English Channel, where he allegedly ordered soldiers to collect seashells as spoils of war, his reign was marked more by absurdity than conquest. He drained the treasury on lavish games, golden statues, and decadent feasts, plunging the empire into debt. To recoup funds, he auctioned off palace furniture, raised taxes to unbearable levels, and even accused wealthy citizens of treason just to seize their estates. By 41 AD, the people were silent, the Senate broken, and the Praetorian Guard had had enough. In a plot that unfolded within the palace itself, Caligula was stabbed to death in a corridor, alongside his wife and infant daughter. His reign ended not with a grand war or public uprising, but in a shadowy corner of his own home. Nero ruled far longer, 14 years, but his damage was deeper, structural. Though his early reign was marked by promise, Nero's neglect of state affairs and obsession with his own artistic career eroded the strength of Rome from within. He rarely led campaigns himself, instead delegating military duties to generals, many of whom lost confidence in his leadership. When revolts erupted in Britain under Boudicca, in Armenia against Parthia, and in Judea, Nero hesitated, distracted by festivals and tours of Greece. Economically, his overspending was catastrophic. The rebuilding of Rome after the Great Fire came with massive expenses, especially the construction of his personal palace, the Domus Aurea, a massive gold-drenched estate, complete with an artificial lake and rotating dining room. To fund it all, he debased Roman currency and raised taxes across the empire. Discontent simmered. By 68 AD, revolts broke out in Gaul, Spain, and North Africa. Even the Praetorian Guard, the same force that protected emperors, turned against him. With no loyal legions left, Nero fled Rome. Alone, abandoned, and declared an enemy of the state, he took his own life in a villa outside the city. His final words, as reported, were, "What an artist dies in me." Caligula scarred the palace. Nero shook the foundations of the empire. Today, Caligula is remembered as the prototype of the mad emperor. Nero, on the other hand, has become a symbol of corruption and vanity, Rome's ultimate narcissist, who performed while his people burned. We know both left Rome bleeding, but tell us in the comments, who do you think was worse, Caligula the Mad or Nero the Performer?